eyes of the nation are watching. And the church is awake. The ballots are cast. The battle is spiritual. And the destiny of a nation hangs in the balance once again. This is FlashPoint, Election Night in America.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Gene Bailey. Glad you're with us for this very special presentation, FlashPoint's Election Night in America. Thank you for being with us. We've got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to cover all the elections, so you don't need to go anywhere for the next 2 hours. We're going to give you insight that you won't get anywhere else. Well, let me go to the big wall here and bring in some of our virtual guests that's starting off with us. We have Dean Michelle Bachman, Rick Green, and Pastor Hank. Dean Bachman, I'll start with you. What are you expecting to see tonight?
I'm not hearing Gene.
They're not hearing me? Are you still not hearing me?
I see your hand, Gene, but I can't hear anything. So I don't know if you talked to me, but hey, it's great to be back. I missed you, brother. Missed you. Missed being on. Been from Virginia to Wyoming and Montana, Philadelphia, you name it. The harvest is great out there, folks. I'm telling you, young people are hungry to get involved. So regardless of election results tonight, I'm telling you, the long-term view when you think about this next generation is looking very good. So anyway, good to be back, brother.
Yeah, it's good to have you back. All right, we're going to come back to you guys in just a moment. Let me show you where else we're going to go. Well, let's go over here with our friends David and Tim Barton. Gentlemen, glad to have you here tonight. Tim, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go to the governor race in Virginia. That's the first thing. Polls closed at 7 Eastern, so we've got some data. So let's put the data up here and see help us understand what's really happening with Winsome Sears.
So with Winsome Sears, what we're looking at is 4 years ago when they had the election, there were about 3.3.
Okay, let me, guys, use my laptop over there, and you can put it on the big screen.
Hey, Eric, come up. Let's use your laptop. We got Eric. So overview, we got about 3.3 million votes that were cast 4 years ago. So somewhere in that vicinity we think will happen. At this point, there's about 1.1 million in. So we're about 1/3 of the way through the votes we think will count tonight. So there's 3 big races: Virginia, the governor, lieutenant governor, and you also have the attorney general. That's what we're watching.
So when you see that right there with they're already, this is Decision Desk, they're already calling this for Spanberger. Do you think is there any way that could turn back between now and
there's always a way it could turn back, but it'll be a shock for everybody if it does. Her polling has been double-digit ahead throughout most of the race. The spending has been 3 to 4 to 1 in her favor. And there's not been anything to indicate that Winsome Sears is closing that gap significantly.
And the only thing that tightened the polls was a little bit of a gaffe, kind of like in the 2021 Virginia governor's race, where very famous gaffe of parents should have no say in the outcome of the children's education. There was similar gaffes along the way, although this one happened to be more of Jay Jones and not condemning some of those really vile text messages. But that's the only reason there was even a tightening in that governor's race with Winsome Sears. So there's not a lot of expectation coming in based on the way the campaign was run that she was going to have a really strong chance to win this.
And kind of looking at the voting maps from 4 years ago, you see where Republicans and Democrats voted and where each group won. It looks kind of the same right now. The layout is the same. You're not really seeing more areas become red or more areas become blue or whatever. It looks about the same as it did 4 years ago.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. What should the people watching at home, this is not good news to start off with. FlashPoint Army's worked hard. Doing the letter writing campaign and trying to get things. So let's say it goes for Spanberger the way it looks like it's going. Is there any daylight here that we should see something good coming out of this race?
There's several things I think can be good. Okay. One is your attorney general's race. So if that's picked up, then that's setting up the next gubernatorial election 4 years from now with mayors, which would be good. The other thing is this will tell you a whole lot about where we've seen a lot of Democrats nationally kind of disengaging because they like what Trump's doing, they like the direction. And so if this margin were to be a little closer, or if fewer Democrats voted in this election, I don't expect Democrats to start voting for Republicans because they like what Trump's doing. I expect they to sit home in the next election, kind of wait it out. That's usually how people change from one party to the other. They don't go over. They kind of sit out some time, and then they come later. So if we see lower voter turnouts in Virginia on the Democrat side, then probably there's some dissatisfaction with the way Democrats have been doing things. If you see a greater turnout in Virginia, then probably that kind of blows apart all the thesis that Dems may turn toward Republicans in this next election a year from now. So we'll see.
All right. Well, we've lost some feeds in the control room. So as soon as we get this back, let us know. But let's talk about some of the other races coming up. Hit what's going on with Chitterelli and Mikey Sherrill up in New Jersey.
Yeah, so this is another one of those interesting races where the Democrats have been favored in some extent, but Republicans have we would consider a much better chance in New Jersey, at least at this point. The polling shows a gap, and hopefully we can pull up some of the New Jersey polling in a second and kind of track some of that. What we will be able to see with early voting, again, is where some of the trends are. The last governor's election, about 20% of the final vote total was from early voting. Usually early voting is the first thing that comes in, and so that will give us an indication to some extent. In Virginia, I think it was about 1/3, 33% of early voting that ended up being the total of the vote in the last governor's election. So we can track a lot from early voting. That's what we'll really know at the very beginning with polling coming in. And again, it looks like New Jersey, maybe not quite the canary in the coal mine, but at least will give us an indication of some of the pulse of where the American people are.
And what you got in New Jersey, too, since Chitterelli ran 4 years ago, he's already a known entity. So he didn't have to spend as much money on name ID. He can put more into election turnout. So this may be a much closer race. He may actually take it this time. And that would be a significant indicator of kind of tone in the nation as well. But this is his second time, and at this point, he's running much closer than he did four years ago.
Well, sorry, if I could add too. So the one thing about Virginia that's also worth noting, where New Jersey might be very different. In Virginia, the population's gone up several hundred thousand, 154,000 something. When you look at some of the early voter engagement, over 200,000 mail-in ballots came from Democrats. And so in Virginia, again, there was a little bit of expectation that there's a bigger Democrat presence, maybe a little more engagement, where if you go back to 2021, the reason maybe Youngkin, apart from God's favor in a lot of ways, but other dynamic factors because of COVID and the close downs, and there were other impacts that then when you had a potential governor saying that parents should have no say in their kids' education, that was quite significant. Not having that dynamic, it's not surprising that Democrats would maybe have a little more voice. New Jersey is where, again, it could be very, very different based on some of the population engagement and other dynamics as well.
And behind you see the map with Mayoras. This is the one in Virginia that's expected to be much closer than either Spamberger or the lieutenant governor's race. And so you can see there how close that margin is. And that would be a significant pickup in Virginia if Mayoras gets that.
In the last race, there was about 3.3 million that voted in the election. So we still have a long way to go before we really know something. And the fact where you see a lot of these areas that have not yet reported, those are generally more conservative areas. So right now we're looking, roughly 30,000, 27,000 vote difference. Well, there's no doubt 27,000 votes there. And, of course, a lot of these counties are not fully reported yet. Yeah. So a lot to track as we go.
And the other thing that kind of goes with this is this kind of matches what happens with Virginia in a lot of races. So Northern Virginia up by D.C., Charlottesville over here, Roanoke, down in the military bases area in Richmond. Those are hard blue areas, and that's high population areas. And so even though there's much more red in the state, this is much more rural out here in north. And so we'll see how that shakes out. So if you have fewer Democrats voting and the same number of rural areas, then it'll probably be a win. So we'll just have to see how all that shakes out.
All right, let me go. I think we have Michelle Bachman. Put her back here up on the screen, and we'll go to Michelle Bachman. I think you have me now. Let me get your take. What's going on there in Virginia?
Hi, Gene. Yeah, it's very disappointing to see the numbers. I was at a rally last night for Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears, and there was great hope, great enthusiasm for this race. But I just want to say a couple things to your viewers. First of all, this is obviously not a presidential year. It's not a midterm election. This is what you call an off-year election. It's very difficult to get people out to the polls. When Glenn Youngkin won for the governorship 4 years ago, there was a real high compare and contrast. Terry McAuliffe, the Democrat governor, did an absolutely terrible job running his race. He actually went on stage and said that parents should not have the right to direct their children's education. He said that. And this is while there was a young boy pretending to be a girl, and he was, I hate to say this, sodomizing a girl in the bathroom, and the school district hid it and moved the kid to another school, and he did it again. And the story came out, and Glenn Youngkin was very forthright. He said, boys should not be in girls' bathrooms. See what can happen? And parents need to have the right to direct their kids' education. This was such a high impact message because it happened in Loudoun County. It happened in the heart of a Democrat district, very high income people right up by Washington, D.C. So the Democrats had it, the Democrat voters had it with their Democrat governor, and they were not going to reelect him. And Glenn Youngkin played it exactly right. Here's what is the hard part. Glenn Youngkin has been a fantastic governor. We've seen $150 billion in economic growth in Virginia in these last 4 years. And Virginia was an exit state. People were leaving Virginia because of the Democrat governorship. Businesses weren't moving in, they were moving out. Just the opposite happened under the Republican governor. Businesses have been moving in. It was an extra $10 billion in revenue, and the governor gave $9 billion back to the taxpayers in rebates. So really, this should have been a Republican win, but there wasn't the high contrast in the governor's race this time. And also, we don't know how much the shutdown played into this, because the people who came out to vote may have been here in Tidewater, Virginia, which is the largest naval base in the world. They've been impacted, and also all the government people, employees up by Virginia. So that may have been part of what played into it too. So it's very, very sad outcome for tonight.
Well, let me bring in Rick Green. Rick, let me get your take on what you're seeing with Virginia.
Well, it's a great reminder for us, Gene, that our duty doesn't stop just because we won a huge presidential election that gave us a reprieve in many ways. We've said it on FlashPoint over and over again. You know, the president's given us air cover at the federal level, but we've got to do the work at the local level and the state level. And one of the most important lessons I ever learned from that guy standing next to you, I don't recognize him because he's wearing a coat and tie, but David Barton taught me a long time ago that John Jay quote about all the best men can do is their duty, being neither elated by success, however great, nor discouraged by disappointment, however frequent and mortifying. And so, you know, regardless of how the elections go tonight, tomorrow morning, Gene, our duty hasn't changed. We're going to keep in the fight. We're going to keep getting people to be biblical citizens. And I think this is a great lesson for us going into the midterms that are going to be so important, but also even thinking 3 years from now and the next presidential election. So I think it's a good reminder for us. We are not on a coasting situation here. We've still got a lot of work to do in this country to get rid of the rot and rebuild the walls.
Yeah, it's so true. Let me bring in Pastor Hank Kunneman. Pastor Hank, I mean, this says we've got our job cut out for us, the American people, what Rick said, and whatever, well, everybody has said tonight. You know, it's still surprising to me that people really have embraced Spanberger to the degree they have. But this shows us the job that we have to do going forward.
Well, Gene, again, I think what we have to look at, you had asked a question at the beginning of this broadcast. You said, what are you expecting to see? And that is a great question. And really what I'm expecting to see is, number one, the new. God has been declaring that new things are in motion. Now, just because they're in motion doesn't mean that they manifest as quick as we want. Okay, God was prophesying for years that he would raise up a deliverer out of New York, and that we can see is being fulfilled with President Trump, but it's still a process. The other thing we're going to see is we're going to see a lot of the same. And this is where we have to be careful as the FlashPoint Army and American people, because Exodus 15 is a great example. When God delivered a nation, right, they had a praise party right there at the Red Sea shore, and then 3 days later, they're complaining to the point where they want to trade out their leader and they want to go back to socialism and communism, right? They forgot the victory. So we have to be careful because there is going to be some of the same. The other thing we're going to see is the fragile. What do I mean by that? Listen, to think that this is going to be the norm of our country is not what God has been saying. It's fragile because the Democratic Party, as we know it and as we see, is falling apart. Gene, it's a no-brainer. You don't even have to be prophetic to see that. It's falling apart. It's fragile. So what do? We have to remember two principles very quickly. Jeremiah 1:10. We speak revival. We speak reform. Well, reform is to reform something. Jeremiah 1:10 says you got to throw down, destroy, pull out, overthrow before you build and plant. To Rick's point, it's a process. But let's not forget, God is so wise when he told Israel. He said, here's how I'm going to bring deliverance. Exodus 23, verse 30. Little by little shall you drive out the giants. And I'm telling you, it's in motion, Gene. We are going to see what God has promised, the reset and the reversals. But to Rick's point and to Dean Bachman's point, we've got to keep our foot on the gas. Keep praying, keep standing, keep voting. Get out there and do your part, because God has inserted himself at this time in our country, and we cannot let the Lord down.
No, amen. We have to keep our feet to the plow and our hands to the plow. All right, so listen, let me go to what Speaker Mike Johnson said earlier about the Democrat Party. Watch.
As Democrats continue to pander to their radical base of affluent progressives, President Trump and Republicans are building a new multi-generational coalition of voters that is grounded in common sense. Since November 2024, Republicans have welcomed record numbers of Hispanic and Latino voters, Black and African American voters, Jewish voters, union workers, young people, all these different segments of the population, and they came in large numbers. People everywhere can see clearly who's fighting and voting here every day and delivering for them. And I'll say this clearly to every hardworking American in any place who's missed a paycheck, anyone who has been made to suffer because the services, the health services you rely upon, or the food and nutrition supplement for your family, anyone who is hurting, you have a home in the Republican Party. You have people here who are elected by their constituents to come and do their job, and they do it. They're voting to support you, to make these programs available.
All right, so home in the Republican Party, David, when you hear Mike Johnson say that, you know, that the news cycle with the shutdown, you would think most of the momentum has been with the Republican side because the Dems have clearly the responsible party. But does this election, what we're seeing, does that echo that?
No, not necessarily, because again, these are two very blue states out of 50 states. This is not a good snapshot of what the nation is doing or what it's feeling or believing. There are some things we'll see tonight that may tell us a little more. What goes on with ballot initiatives up in Maine, those are pretty good indicators, and that's kind of a split state. It has been one congressional district red, one congressional district blue. So those will be helpful things. But at this point, looking at Virginia and New Jersey, while we have great hope for them, that's not a good snapshot of what the nation looks like. This is what happens tonight. These are two really blue states.
Yeah. All right, Tim, you had some other input there.
Well, first of all, from Virginia, you know, if more Virginians watch FlashPoint, we would not be as divided of a nation. But because mainstream media is not reporting on the fact that Democrats are the ones not voting in favor of the vote to end more or less the filibuster so that we can actually move to this clean slate, most Democrats think it is President Trump's fault. Not to digress on that, but we live in a divided America where they're not hearing the truth. But here's a report ballot to show what that looks like. But literally New York City, as they're voting for a mayor, where we know there's been a huge influx of illegal migrants, illegal immigrants coming in, there's no ID required and these people are allowed to vote. All right, if we can put that up on the screen, I do want to show this ballot, and maybe if we can even zoom on this when it gets up on the screen. When this ballot comes up, it will show up top, you see, well, on your screen, you see top left, Zalman Mondami. Go to the middle top. There he is again, Zalman Mondami. You see there's no Cuomo on there, but you do see Eric Adams, who already dropped out the top right as you go. This is the ballot in New York City for the mayor. And again, no ID is required. So we are definitely already seeing some shenanigans from Democrats in some of these races, the way that it's being conducted and carried out, et cetera. So not maybe a surprise. I was just telling my dad, I'm curious what happens in this New York City mayoral race. It reminds me maybe of when the not Democrats, Israelites, maybe the same in this case, when the Israelites said, no, we want quail, and God said, oh, I'll give you quail.
Yeah.
Right? You will have so much quail, you will not want this anymore. And hopefully, if we get a little socialism, maybe it's the antidote to go, we don't want that anymore. But it's interesting that the majority of native New Yorkers are voting for Cuomo from early voting statistics, and the majority of non-native, specifically non-U.S. born migrants in New York City are voting for Mamdani. And when you're not requiring ID, then we don't know if they're citizens or not.
And you're looking at 16 candidates, and it's very possible that Mamdani may win this with only 7 or 8% of the vote. I mean, he can come out of there with a single-digit win, and people say, oh, we've all switched to socialism now, and that may not necessarily be, but when you have such a low voter turnout in those big cities, it's easy for radicals to win.
Yeah, all right, well, let me bring in Liz Joy from New York. Liz, I get you to weigh in here on what's happening there. Where do you see this happening?
Well, let me just say that, boy, are we in for it tonight. We've been praying over our state. We've been praying over New York City. We actually have had the highest voter turnout in New York City that we've ever had. As of 6 p.m. tonight, we had 1.85 million people that showed up at the polls. We're probably going to be hitting upwards of 2 million people by the time the polls close at 9 p.m. tonight. Looking at that ballot, that is exactly true. What you were all just saying, that's exactly what happened with our ballot, here in New York. And the other thing that I want to point out, which we've talked about many times on FlashPoint, New York has no voter ID. We have absolutely no voter ID required in our state. And you have to remember that New York City is also the place where the New York City Council, the Democrat-led New York City Council, wanted to give 800,000 illegal immigrants the right to vote, people that were not citizens. And it went to, a court case. Thankfully, we won that court case. The Republicans did. Right. But we don't have any voter ID here, and it is very disturbing. We need it. I'm still holding out hope for our city. I really am. This is going to be very dangerous for us. This is going to be a very dangerous New York City, which we've already had a dangerous New York City if Mamdani actually wins this tonight. And I will tell you, one of the things that I think is the most dangerous thing in America is the uninformed, uneducated voter. And that is what is happening in New York City. We have a very charismatic Mamdani, 34 years old, where we have people showing up to vote who have made their decision on Mamdani by a 60-second soundbite on TikTok, where he's promising free food, free buses, free education, free health care, and affordability for everybody. The problem is that it's the New York taxpayers that are going to have to pay for it, and people are going to be fleeing the city, and we've already lost 1.5 million people, if not more, who have throughout migration in New York City. So we are in a very dangerous state right now.
We are. Let me read you what President Trump posted. If communist candidate Zohran Mamdani wins the election for mayor of New York City, it's highly unlikely that I'll be contributing federal funds other than the very minimum as required in my beloved first home. Because the fact is, communist, this once great city, has zero chance of success. And of course, he goes on to talk about whether you like Cuomo or not, you really have no choice of vote for him and hope he does a fantastic job if he's capable. He is capable of it. Mamdani is not. So, Cuomo did himself a lot of harm with COVID in New York. Do you think there's any way he can get past this tonight, Liz? I'll go back to you.
I do think Cuomo could have gotten past this and can get past this. The issue with former Governor Cuomo is he's not a humble man. So when repeatedly asked if he would apologize to New Yorkers, he was prideful about it. He's never actually really humbled himself and said, I'm very sorry for the way that I handled the COVID pandemic. Although there was a spot this morning on Fox News where they pushed him, trying to give him the opportunity to say he was sorry to all of the New Yorkers who lost loved ones and lost their businesses, and 15,000, senior citizens. But he was prideful about it. And he just, he hasn't humbled himself enough to say, hey, I really messed that up. I love New York. I'm going to do better. Give me a chance. And I think New Yorkers would have, because we're familiar with him. We're familiar with Andrew Cuomo. And I do agree that it would be better to have, a Democrat like Governor Cuomo, although I never actually voted for him. It would be better to have him as opposed to Mamdani, who is an anti-Semite. And I think that New York City is really looking at the difference between who is going to protect the Jewish people and who is not. Andrew Cuomo, the one good thing I can say about Andrew Cuomo is that he always protected the Jewish people. He always protected the Jews.
All right, we'll come back to you there, right there, Liz. I need to move on before the bottom of the half here. Let's go to New Jersey. Let me show you this. New Jersey governor general election showing Mikey Sherrill with 61%. 533,000 votes with 26% reporting. David, you see it there. What do you make of this latest report with New Jersey?
Until we see where those numbers come from, I don't make much of it yet. Those are numbers that are way off from what's predicted. And the predictions can be wrong, but not that far. And so those may all be the early vote count out of the biggest cities. We just don't know yet. That may not be the rural count. At this point, it's too early to really panic yet. So that may be a surprise. It may not. We'll just have to see.
All right, let me go to Dean Bachman here. I got 2 minutes before I have to go to a break. But Dean Bachman, all that's going on in New Jersey and New York is crucial. Every one of these states we've talked about, they're crucial to America. But what makes this so different for Americans?
Well, I think, it's not lost on me that Hank is a teacher. He's a pastoral teacher, and Rick is a teacher. He's teaching the Patriot Academy. I'm here as dean of the university. We have a PhD program in government and master's and undergraduate programs. We're all in education. And one thing that the left understood early on is they had to capture education, and they do that through the public schools. So they have a captive audience. And so if you are training up the next generation in concepts that aren't biblical, you're not going to get a biblical result necessarily at the polls. And so I think the hope here is that we continue to do, through programs like yours, education for the voters so they can know what is true and what isn't true, what's biblical and what isn't biblical. And so our hope is that we are going to stay the course. The first thing I did this morning, I was still in bed, and I was texting people that I know in New York to get out and vote. I sent a few articles about why it's important. And so it's about the ground game. And so this election was all about getting out the vote at the polls. So for people that are involved in the political part of all this, they've got to do a better job being organized and getting people out to the polls.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a break for the bottom of the hour. Daystar connects with us here in about a minute and a half. We're going to continue to cover. When we come back, we're going to hit what's coming up in California, Proposition 50. FlashPoint, we didn't get to spend a lot of time on this, but we're going to talk about what that does and what that means for Californians and for the rest of the country. Make sure you stick with Election Night in America. We return right after this.
There's never been a more important time to be bold and speak truth. FlashPoint is answering the call. There's no shortage of vision, and it's time to impact culture in every way we can. And we can't do it without you.
We must do more. We can't just sit back and wait. That's why your gift makes such a difference here at FlashPoint.
Your giving fuels everything we are doing here at FlashPoint. We're here to equip, activate, and disciple. And your support makes this possible. FlashPoint is a 501c3, and your tax-deductible donation goes directly to the mission. Give at fparmy.com/donate or text FLASH to 28950. It's secure, quick, and makes an impact. If mailing your donation, send it to FlashPoint, P.O. Box 1, Newark, Texas, 76071. Stand with us. Speak truth. Be the light. This is FlashPoint. Tonight, the eyes of the nation are watching, and the church is awake. The ballots are cast. The battle is spiritual, and the destiny of a nation hangs in the balance once again. This is FlashPoint, Election Night in America.
Welcome, everyone, to Election Night in America, a special presentation by FlashPoint. Special welcome to all of you on the Daystar Television Network. Welcome for joining us tonight for the next 90 minutes. You're going to stick with us as we cover what's going on in your world. Let me show you. Let me go to some of my panel here tonight. Rick Green, of course, Liz Joy, Pastor Hank Kunneman, and Dean Michelle Bachman. Pastor Hank, we as believers, I'm going to go to you, we need to understand the responsibility that we have in America as believers. And you know, I've done my part of giving the pastors a hard time, the woke pastors. I'm still going to do that. But the reality is, every one of us has a responsibility to stand up for America.
Yeah. Well, we all do, especially because our vote is connected to our voice. And one of the things that we have to also look at, you know, as we often talk about spiritual warfare, well, part of that warfare is to make God's people, as well as those who are voting for, you know, biblical values or moral truth, right, and standards, is to make them apathetic, or how about this, ignorant. And that's what we've been battling against right now in our nation. But Gene, if I may, I don't know if you're going to talk about New York anymore. I just really want to give people hope of something that the Lord prophesied, if I may, and I can just read it very quickly, just an excerpt. Do I have just a second to do that?
Sure, go ahead.
I want to check with your programming here.
Sure.
Okay, this is important because this isn't so much what God is saying about candidates as it is about what is in the process. So I'll read it. Therefore, this was this Sunday, therefore, do not be troubled over New York. For it shall be said, and they will say, what has happened to New York City? The apple, the big apple, has become rotten to its core. Yet I say, this is a setup, my setup, so that you may understand that I'm dealing, as I did in the days of Elijah, I'm dealing with the false, and I'll continue to deal with the false, as I did with the false prophets of Baal. God says, therefore, watch New York, as it shall be said, they've become rotten. Yet I speak to you of a new that shall arise. And you, New York and New York City, are the branch of my pruning. Therefore, you will blossom, New York City, in the hour. Now listen to this part. That shall come after. My fire shall fall to judge those who shall rejoice over their term. I will prune the rotten apple, and it will fall to the ground in its season. in its season. And something new shall come out of New York, New York City, that shall not only be the branch of my pruning, but it shall look red. It will not be in this season, but in a new season that will come out of my shaking, that will make the big apple red in New York. New York, your state shall begin to turn red. And then he goes on and talks about in New Jersey that shall be worn in New Jersey if we will continue to stand and pray. And again, this isn't so much about the candidates, because either one of them are rotten to the core. Listen, what do they call him? Mom commie? God is saying, as you see this, it's got to go rotten so that the fire of God's judgment can come, not on the people, on the system, on the policies, on the legislation, and to those who align themselves with wickedness that think they're going to have their term. It's going to be their way. God says, not so. I'm going to allow certain things to happen because the redemptive plan, this is the process, is the big apple may be rotten, but it's going to fall. It's going to become the branch of the Lord's pruning. And watch what begins to happen in New York. Because if God can take from 9/11, an attack from without, they are being attacked within with what is trying to arise. God raised up a president out of New York. That is still the promise of that place, of what he's going to do for our country. He hasn't forgotten us.
That's right.
We are in the time of God making this nation great again.
Well, we received that word. Thank you, Pastor Hank. Now, I'm going to take a hard left here. Rick, I want to show you this video. This is, I just feel like this should be for you, Rick. This should be for you. This is number 19, guys. This is Nancy Pelosi. She's mocking Christians. Real quick clip. Nancy Pelosi.
You're people of faith. You go to church on Sunday and pray on church on Sunday and pray on people the rest of the week. What is this? What is this?
What is this?
Well, first of all, Gene, wait. I will never, ever probably say this about you again. Y'all go back to that shot where Gene's in the shot with me here. Gene, you look like an angel. Oh. You literally have wings right now. This is a weird shot. I feel like you're either a Marvel character with wings or an angel. I don't know which one. Okay. Anyway, so listen, these people hate us, Gene. They hate us. They hate Christians. They hate God. And this is why, you go back to what Hank was saying earlier in the program. This is no time. I mean, we have to recognize that our cause is just, and there's a lot of work still to do. And these leftists are in every community in America. This isn't just New York where these kind of fights are being fought. And I feel like we're at that very spot where the children of Israel were. The Egyptians are chasing us. We're looking at the Red Sea. And a year ago, we would have said, we don't know what's going to happen. We may lose the whole country. And God did the miracle. He parted the Red Sea. We got on the other side. We had that great victory. And to Hank's point from earlier, that doesn't mean we stop working or we're done. Yeah. Now we have to actually go take the land, and it's inch by inch. It's yard by yard. This is going to be a generational fight in every community in America. We cannot think that the miracle God provided behind us with the Red Sea and the Egyptians solved everything, or the miracle in the presidential race with Trump solved everything. We've got to fight for this tooth and nail in every community in America, and we've got to be faithful to what God has promised us and what he's equipped us to do.
All right, Michelle, you heard Rick say this is a generational fight. You agree with that?
I absolutely do. We're doing a symposium this week on the Pilgrims, and they're my favorite people in all of American history because they were committed to the Word of God. They had gone through revival. They'd gone through discipleship. They'd gone through persecution, but they went through long-form obedience. It's the same story for us. If we want the nation to continue, or any nation to continue, that's what we need to do. Have regeneration in our spirit, be filled with the power of the Holy Spirit, but then have long obedience of the Word. Jesus said, if you love me, obey my word. That's right. That's what we need to do with our lives. Teach it to our children, teach it to others, and it's the long-form obedience. That's the generational commitment that we need to have. They did. The Pilgrims did. They had long-form commitment. We need to do that too.
I like that. Long-form commitment, generational battle. Let's go over here to the Bartons, David and Tim Barton. Guys, TBN. Daystars joined us. Give us a quick update. What are we looking at on results?
Okay, so a couple of things, if we can put some of these graphics up. This is a map of New Jersey. This is the one from the last governor's race. You can see where the Democrat actually won this race, but you can see where the makeup of the state was. When you compare it to the makeup of what is going on right now, it is very different, the Democrat performance on what's going on. And actually, they're expecting an increased voter turnout in this New Jersey election. And it definitely is trending Democrat right now, but there's a lot left. If we go back to Virginia, there are several interesting things in the Virginia race going on right now. First of all, Jay Jones was the one who they thought might be unseated or might lose in this election bid. And right now, they're calling it for every Democrat. But this is by far the closest of the races. About a 50,000 vote difference here out of 2.1 million cast. If you go down and look at, for example, the governor's race, they've already called for the Democrat. And the split there is almost 200,000 vote difference. So what you do see,
what you've got right here is that's pretty close to what the polling showed.
Correct.
But that other one with Jones is the one that's really surprising because Myers came into this with about a 6-point lead, it looked like, and the fact that they're projecting him to lose barely is a significant shift. So it's not mixing the way they thought it was.
But also the fact that, again, this is a 50,000 vote difference as opposed to a 200,000 vote difference. So it does show that there were a lot of moderates, maybe even some Democrats that recognized what happened wasn't good and we shouldn't support that.
The other thing that's interesting, if you can go back to New Jersey for just a minute, is New Jersey, they're projecting what they think the outcome will be,
right?
What they think the total numbers will be. And the total numbers they're projecting for New Jersey are higher than they were 4 years ago, which means the Democrat voter turnout is much higher, which means the consideration that Democrats may stay home because they like what Trump's doing, that's not showing up. So literally, and the one from 4 years ago, this up here was red, this is red. They've not reported yet. You see, especially these areas that were darker red have not reported yet. So right now, Citarelli, he lost 3 points last time. They're projecting him to lose this time because there's a much higher voter turnout, but they still have a lot to count.
So it's possible we still might see Citarelli pull this out, you think?
He might pull it out.
Well, it's estimated 2.3 million votes remaining.
So
there's a long way to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna keep our faith up here for a good win. Let's talk about what's going on before the break. I see we're going to talk about what's happening in California, Proposition 50. Now we won't be able to cover tonight what happened in California because their polls close very late for us here in Central. So Proposition 50 is a redistricting. Talk about what that means.
So what you've got is the Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. House are so tight. And generally, what happens in the off-year elections, like coming up next year, generally the non-presidential party picks up seats. And if that happens, that means the Republicans will lose the House, and that means Trump stops everything he's doing as far as the agenda through Congress. It won't happen. So everything is being put into preserving the Republican lead that they've got of a few seats in the House. So what's happened? Texas stepped in and back up. The U.S. Constitution says that every 10 years you do a census of the people, and then you divide that among the allotted representatives, see how many congressmen you get, et cetera. So there's no constitutional requirement on how often you can redistrict. So what Texas did is says, hey, we think that if we'll change our redistricting from what it was just a few years ago, we can pick up 5 more Republican seats. And they did that. And so Newsom says, wait a minute, you can't do that. California, we're going to redistrict, and we're going to pick up 5 more Democrat seats to negate Texas. And so for them to do that, they have a constitutional provision in California says you have to have this board that convenes and draws the thing. They're voting on an initiative tonight that would say, hey, we don't care what the Constitution says. Let's just redraw the line.
Let's break the law.
Let's break the law and redraw. But see, what's happened in the last week or two, you've seen Ohio says we can give 2 more Republican seats. You've got Iowa saying we can give 2 more Republican seats. So this is a big race right now. I mean, literally, constitutionally, you could redistrict every 2 years if you wanted to. And what we're seeing is something we haven't seen in a long time. Used to be everybody waited 10 years and 10 years and 10 years, and now the states are scrambling to see what, and this is all based on controlling Congress over the next year, which would be the rest of Trump's agenda.
All right, let me go back over here. I want to show you what President Trump had to say about redistricting in California. Number 20, guys, can you put that on the screen? The unconstitutional redistricting vote in California, giant scam in that the entire process, in particular the voting itself, is rigged. All mail-in ballots for the Republicans in that state are shut out. It's under very serious legal and criminal review. So with that being said, what does he mean in criminal review there? How can this be under? Well, other than the fact they're breaking the law.
If they can show constitutionally they're breaking the law, and if they can get the courts to agree with that, they can start prosecution against that illegal rigging of elections, election interference type of stuff. So it really boils down to whether they can get the legal opinions they need to say this is a violation of the law, this cannot be done, and it doesn't matter, you can't vote to ignore the law. And then that would allow the Justice Department to step in and say, no, you can't do this. But that's going to come down to some real determinations on the judicial side.
All right. Rick Green, what do you think about this whole redistricting thing?
Well, I always hesitate to disagree because, you're supposed to respect your elders, and Gene and David are definitely my elders. But y'all use the term breaking the law, and I think they're doing a state constitutional amendment to reverse a state constitutional amendment from a few years ago that set up the commission to do redistricting and only do it every 10 years. And I think the people of California absolutely have the right to do that. I understand there can be rigging in the constitutional amendment process that they're voting on. So maybe that's what y'all mean, and that's what they're potentially cheating on. But I think for them to actually do redistricting is perfectly constitutional under the U.S. Constitution for them to do that. And if they want to go back to allowing the legislature to do it, which is actually how I think it should be done. I don't like these redistricting commissions because you can't get the politics out of it no matter what you do, but you can't hold those commissioners accountable like you can a legislature. So I'm just saying I don't want them to pick up 5 Democrat seats, but I think the process for doing a constitutional amendment like they're doing is not breaking the law. It's changing the law to the way that will then allow them to do redistricting and get 5 more Democrats, just like we're doing in Texas.
And I think the people want that because it's showing that coming into this election, about 56% of the people in California said they support that constitutional amendment. So if they do that, if they go through, if it's not been rigged, if everything was done legally, they're going to go through it and find a way to get 5 seats out of that. Now, what happens is they'll end up back in court because there will be people who say you've unconstitutionally excluded this group. But now the U.S. Supreme Court has picked up this year a case on that could change everything because they've been using the 1964 Voting Rights Act to say, hey, when you redistrict, you have to have consideration for these special minority communities. And it looks like the Supreme Court is going to say, and that's not a consideration anymore because that's reverse racism, and we're not going to do that. And so it could change everything if you start taking out the special minorities that have received special attention. If the Supreme Court does that, and you get what these states are doing along the way, you can see a real change across the nation.
All right, let me Dean Bachman, let me get you to weigh in here. What do you think?
Well, there's few states out there that have been looking at redistricting, like Indiana, for instance. They could probably pick up 1 more seat. And so some states have been hesitant to do this. They don't want to look ungentlemanly, if you will. But the one thing the Democrats understand, at the end of the day, it's a math game. You have to get more votes into the till, and they'll do whatever it takes. So Republicans need to wake up in these state legislatures, and if they have a chance to redistrict so that they can get more seats, my opinion is you do it. Yeah. You do what you need to do so that you can get your guys to win, because we will never again have a Donald Trump for president of the United States. This is a very unique opportunity. We don't want to see his presidency cut in half.
Absolutely. So good. So good. All right. Let me show you, since we're with you before you go, Dean Bachman, I want to, let me show you this clip about the Dems are in Virginia are actually campaigning against Trump. Imagine that. Watch.
One of the things that's going on here in Virginia, and for the folks who are in different parts of the country, they don't see the nonstop commercials.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
The Democrats are not so much running against you as they're running against Donald Trump.
Yeah, go figure. I mean, he's already president, right? But, I'm just trying to figure out, are we in this universe or in theirs? We're actually in the real world. In the real world, I am running to be governor of our great Commonwealth of Virginia. We've got work to do.
All right. Dean Bachman, your thoughts?
Well, obviously, the Democrats did focus testing, focus groups, and they figured out what their voters respond to. And so they're trying to whip up the Trump derangement syndrome people to get out to the polls. So they may have been very, very effective to be able to motivate those voters to actually get out. Because, again, this isn't necessarily high turnout across the board the way it would be in a presidential election or a midterm. Again, this is an off-year election. You only have to gin up a certain highly activated portion of the electorate. So it's a few people, but people who are highly energized. So if the Democrats figured Trump derangement syndrome voters are the ones who will get to the polls, then they ran the right ads. Right. And that is a lesson that we need to learn.
So true, so true. All right, David, here you've got some stuff you want to call.
Yeah, what we've got is Virginia. Virginia, specifically, the races at the top of the ballot. If you look at the governor's race, you look at the lieutenant governor's race, those are races we can now call for the Democrat. That's a disappointment to do that, but that's what the numbers show, and it's not a surprise. So the fact that Abigail Spanberger is now officially, there's enough votes in from enough parts of the state that we look at to say, yep, she's going to win that.
Well, and it's worth noting there's still Still are over 1 million votes they're predicting are to come in, but because of the districts where those votes are remaining, they think the margin is only going to increase. So it's still premature as far as votes being counted. There's over 1 million estimated votes still out there, but based on the way it's all falling right now, they think she's going to run away with this based on what's happening right now.
How far ahead is she in the race?
Well, this is the one that was about 200,000 vote difference last we saw. We've been tracking some other races right now, but we can go back and look to see if that's widened the margin yet. But it was over 200,000 votes, and still there was a lot of some of the major Democrat cities that had outstanding numbers still to come in, and that margin was pretty significant there.
And with 200,000 votes and 1 million left to come in, you gotta really turn that stuff red in a hurry, which is not likely, knowing the districts that still have to contribute those votes. And the same in lieutenant governor's race. That's one we can also call as well. And so lieutenant governor's race in Virginia also called. Still waiting on, we don't have enough numbers yet in New Jersey to call that. A lot of the media is calling that for the Democrats. We'll see. We're going to wait a little while and make sure the numbers add up.
Does any of this surprise you?
No, none of this is a surprise. It's disappointing because we'd hoped for better turnout. We'd hoped for better results. There were some outlier polls that showed the numbers were getting tighter, particularly with Mayorkas. And we haven't called the attorney general race in Virginia yet. But it even looked like that the lieutenant governor was tightening the race some in Virginia. That did not hold up. So there were some outlier polls that had given some indication for maybe, but not so. And the turnout, it was hard to tell from 4 years ago because that was COVID time. And so when you're looking at turnout now and trying to project, but it definitely clearly appears that there's not been a suppression of Democrat vote because Trump's been doing well. It looks like the Democrats have organized and gotten their forces together and turned out in high numbers.
All right, Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it says something, too, about the Dem strategy. One of the things we know coming to elections, there's often an October surprise. This time it was the shutdown of the government. And because we understand what the shutdown was, where the president was saying we're not going to keep funding some of the activity going on, giving health care to illegal migrants while we're robbing from other people, it made sense for us. But when the mainstream media doesn't report that and they hear it's all Trump's fault, this was the October surprise. And I'm saying that again, usually leading into an election, there's some big breaking news that is often used politically to try to sway votes one way or the other. And certainly it should not have gone this way. People should have looked and gone, wait a second, right? Losing some of these SNAP benefits, whatever else. You can't blame Trump for this. But the media and the left has done such a good job of controlling the narrative. I think that also probably had an impact on this election as well.
This is interesting, too, in that both of these states, it seems like the national politics had more impact than the local politics did. And so that's kind of a surprise, too, because often the state races, you see the state issues take predominance. It looks like the national issues and national trending is more of what's driven these two states.
All right. Well, let me get, we're going to lose Liz Joy and Dean Bachman. I want to give you guys, we got like 5 minutes left. I'll give you the 2 minutes here to wrap up. Liz, what you think we're seeing tonight?
I think that we are witnessing, we're in very intense times. Intense times call for intense prayer, and that is where we need to be. You know, we may have won a battle by getting President Trump into office, but we have not won the war, and we need to stay very intense and very focused on what we need to do. We need to help to inform people about what's really going on, and we need to be bold and we need to be courageous.
Dean Bachman, you got a couple minutes here.
I think on the Republican side, they need to get smarter about how to win elections and how to do voter turnout. This election was all about turnout. And the Democrats, you have to hand it to them. They turned out a base to get to the polls. I don't know that there was as much organization, certainly not in the state of Virginia. New York City is a completely different animal. We'll see what happens with New Jersey. But clearly, the lesson from Virginia would be we have to have very smart people running these elections and getting bodies to the polls so that they vote, or getting them to put their ballot in an envelope so that they vote. And the Democrats did a better job on that than the Republicans did in Virginia.
Okay, Pastor Hank, you're leaving also at the top of the hour here. I want to get you to your final comments, but I do want you to pray over all of this, because I can feel our audience, you know, despairing a little bit that this doesn't look so good. Would you please lead us?
Well, all right, let's just pray. Heavenly Father, as we come before you, the Almighty God, you declared from your word through Yeshua that upon this rock, the ecclesia, you will build your church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. This is the time now that the greatest entity in the earth is your people. And I pray that they would arise, that they would stand, and that they, Lord God, would have the veil of deception and even over those in this country removed. We are not troubled. We will not be in fear, for you have declared that the Lord thy God is and shall be with us. Therefore we trust in you. We look to you, the God of the heavens, to move as you did in the times of the Red Sea. Lord, drown the enemies, drown those who would rise up at this time to think that they could steal, kill, and destroy. And we are asking you to bring a deliverance to this country and to the people. And we are asking you, Father, to show mercy for the sake of the people. Lord, as you pass over this land, may your goodness prevail. May your judgments come to that which would seek to arise and bring your restraint by the person and the power of the Holy Spirit, that we see a true shift change, that the people of this land shall rejoice as you bring a reset, a reversal. And God, you raise up your honor as you declared over Pharaoh. It shall be over the enemies of darkness at this time, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. We choose to trust you, God, and we shall quench the fires and stand as the fourth man in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Anyway, hey, Pastor Rank, any last comments?
You know, I just think this. Look, oftentimes we talk about darkness and gross darkness, but we have to be reminded of what Isaiah 60 says. It's when God then positions himself, and it says in verse 3 after darkness and gross darkness, but I, the Lord, shall arise, and my glory shall be seen upon thee. I don't know about you, Gene. I don't care what they report tonight. My eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the Lord upon this country. And there is a future for our children. This is the generation that shall seek his face, and we will see the goodness of God in the land of our living.
Amen. Amen. Good word. Thank you guys for being there. We're going to continue after this hour. But before I go to the break, while we lose some affiliates, I want to remind all of you watching, you can catch us everywhere the FlashPoint Television Network is airing, also YouTube, Rumble, all of those as well. So if we're leaving your area, you can catch us on one of those. And go subscribe, follow, and share this. Rick, I'll give you the last 30 seconds comment before we go out for the half hour.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what David was talking about a few minutes ago. This Supreme Court case that is being taken up could change everything on redistricting, because we'll finally stop factoring race into how we draw the lines. It's so racist to do such a thing and un-American. And so that Supreme Court case is one to keep our eyes on, and we could see a whole lot more of shuffling of the board that will certainly be to the favor of conservatives and Republicans, because we'll get an actual truer representation in Congress.
Oh, so good. Yep. Elections have consequences. We've been saying it for 5 years. And ladies and gentlemen, while you may not like what you see, there are consequences, but let's make this go the direction we need to see it go. I want to say thank you for watching, and listen, don't go away, because we're going to be right back. We're going to talk a little bit more. Pastor Che will join us. We'll get his opinion on what he thinks about California, Proposition 50, live and in person, right after the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Election night in America.
When you show up in FlashPoint gear, you're more than a fan. You're part of the Army. Rep the voices you trust and the truth you believe in.
FlashPointStore.com has new merchandise.
Gear that sparks a conversation. Let the world know you're standing strong, always to the right of center.
Make sure you wear FlashPoint. Always show your colors.
Shop the collection now at FlashPointStore.com. Don't just blend in. Stand out. Be part of the Army. There's never been a more important time to be bold and speak truth. FlashPoint is answering the call. There's no shortage of vision, and it's time to impact culture in every way we can. And we can't do it without you.
We must do more. We can't just sit back and wait. That's why your gift makes such a difference here at FlashPoint.
Your giving fuels everything we are doing here at FlashPoint. We're here to equip, activate, and disciple. And your support makes this possible. FlashPoint is a 501c3, and your tax-deductible donation goes directly to the mission. Give at fparmy.com/donate or text FLASH to 28950. It's secure, quick, and makes an impact. If mailing your donation, send it to FlashPoint, P.O. Box 1, Newark, Texas, 76071. Stand with us. Speak truth. Be the light. This is FlashPoint. Tonight, the eyes of the nation are watching, and the church is awake. The ballots are cast. The battle is spiritual. And the destiny of a nation hangs in the balance once again. This is FlashPoint, Election Night in America.
Welcome back to Election Night in America. I'm your host, Gene Bailey. With us this hour, let me welcome back our friend Mark Meckler is here, Rick Green is here, and Lance Wallnau is eating and drinking something.
I'm having a cookie.
You're having a cookie. All right. Before I get to my guest and Papa Che, who's sitting over here, let me give us a quick update on House races you were talking about.
So in Virginia, we've already called the governor's race, lieutenant governor's race for Democrats, still waiting on the attorney general. Virginia has a process of constitutional amendments that were also really key this time. Virginia, you have to pass the constitutional amendment in 2 sessions, have an intervening election before you can put something on the ballot. So in the last session, what they did in Virginia was they said, okay, we want a constitutional amendment wiping out traditional marriage. We used to have a marriage amendment. We want that gone off the books. And we also have an amendment to make abortion really extreme, really radical, take away all the parental consent laws that we've had. And so that passed that. Now we have this election coming on right now, and then they have to bring this up again in the next session. Then if they pass it again, then it goes to the people to vote on. So what's happened right now is in this election, there were 5 House seats or Assembly seats in Virginia, and 2 of them were held by Republicans. 3 needed to be flipped to Republicans in order to be able to kill this stuff in the House next session. At this point, all 5 of those seats are being won by Democrats by a fairly wide margin at this point. So probably that means that those 2 constitutional amendments will be passed again. They will come to the people, and based on voting patterns, they'll probably end up passing. So really pro-abortion, really lack of traditional marriage, kind of like California has come east is what it amounts to.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about David Owen and May Navarre.
Yeah, so these are some of the House races that we're talking about that were needed to maintain or flip on these. So you can see the Democrats ahead. If we can go to just kind of flip through these a little bit. So Navarre is winning in this one. The same thing, Cole's winning in this one. And you can see, I mean, 34 to 66, you're probably not closing that gap. Let's go to the next one. Similar again with Adams, 54-46. Now this one, depending on how many are outstanding, and I think it's like 68% that's in, there's a chance depending on what counties haven't reported yet, but ultimately it's not looking good on any of these. Let's go to the next one as well. Similar, 58-41%. When you're nearly 20% points different, 68% in, it's pretty much over. Let's go to the last one. But again, when you have one that's maybe this close and you have 30+% yet to report, there is a chance, but right now it's looking like the Democrats are going to take off 5 of those House seats, which then kind of maybe seals the fate a little bit, as you were talking about.
All right, well, we're going to keep watching it. Let me bring in Lance. I know you've been scoring along at home. What do you think? What's your take on the night so far?
Well, Gene, listen, if we had a great show tonight or a great victory, we'd be hanging off the ceilings. But look, these are Democrat territories. I mean, and everybody got all, wrung out over this thing. New York, we'll find out what's going to happen with New York. But Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, it was a big deal when we actually got a Republican in there as a governor. But New Jersey, Virginia, all those counties that are all up there, you know what my theory is, feeding off the trough of the economics of Washington, D.C. This is Democrat territory. Now, the Democrats are going to be doing, you just get ready for this. I mean, I'm glad I listened to Steve Bannon, much as he drives me crazy. He still calls them straight balls and strikes. He said, get ready, because the day after that election, you're going to hear all the crazy news media that's Democrat controlled shrieking with sirens going about how it's the end of the Trump momentum and that this is, now going to be the big victory dance the Democrats are going to do. What this will do is going to send a shockwave, which is good, through our ranks for the midterms, because we're going to go, oh my gosh, Trump's under siege, and then the engine will go to work. But look, I grew up on the doorstep of New Jersey. It's a Democrat state for the most part. The same thing with New York City. After Giuliani, just went downhill ever since then, from Democrat to Democrat to Democrat, de Blasio, Eric Adams. So I'm not shocked. I'm going to be looking at the crosstabs. I'm going to be looking to see how close the elections were. I'll be comforted to know they are close. And I'm going to look at the analysis. I'll just tell you this. Some of the analysis I know already is that Winsome Sears, who many of us were supporting, we had her on the show.
Sure.
That she chose to focus a lot on the issues that are social issues. Of course, that's our base is that way. But economics rated higher as a concern. And her financial spending, according to some of the critics that I talked to, they said she wasn't spending on the issues the voters were actually talking about. She was spending on the issues that we talk about. Well, that's a cautionary tale. You don't get elected by just targeting the social issues. So Democrat territory, Democrats won. No big shock. The world is, still, Trump's got the momentum, and I think our base has now got a wake-up call.
That's good. I think you're absolutely right. But let me go to Mark Meckler. You're up there with Just the News right now. So tell us, you're in D.C. Tell us what you're seeing as the night's unfolded.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not a good night for Republicans, but I'm not surprised by anything that I'm seeing. I mean, nothing at all. Anybody who's been paying attention knew that the Virginia governor's race was lost. And I'm going to be blunt, very frank with you guys. Winsome Sears ran a terrible campaign. From the very beginning, I know people who participated. She was non-responsive to many people who were advising her, regular people. I think Winsome Sears looks great on paper, and she's not good on the campaign trail. And it shows when you don't run a candidate that can command an audience, that knows how to do TV, that knows how to connect with the voters, you're going to lose. There's something else that race shows me in bold relief, which is the Democrats have become the party of evil, to be honest with you. You have a guy in that race who literally wished death, wished murder on his opponents. None of the Democrats would step away from that. None of them removed their endorsements. None of them called on him to drop out of the race. He wished death on children, and he still won that race. And I think that's absolutely incredible. And it tells us the state of the Democrat Party today. I think the same thing is true if you look at New York. You have a candidate that is a radical communist Islamist who hates Israel, who hates Jews, and New Yorkers voted for it. H.L. Mencken famously said that democracy is the theory that the common people know exactly what they want, and they're going to get it good and hard. And I think we're going to see that in all of these races.
Rick, what do you think? I'll let you weigh in here while I got you here.
Yeah, it's such a great reminder to all of us that the basics don't change. I mean, you've got to have, as Mark said, candidates that can articulate the message. You got to be strategic, as Lance was saying, in terms of where you spend your money, which issues you talk about. Your principles don't change, but what you talk about might change. Your emphasis might change. How you package things might change depending upon what's going on in the culture. And, I think everybody on this program, certainly David's been teaching this for years, we have got to make sure that our people know how to think biblically and speak secularly, that they know how to win in these races. They know how to articulate. We've all been talking so much about Charlie over the last few weeks, and what we all loved about Charlie was his ability to articulate, his ability to ask the right questions, his ability to be witty and be a happy warrior. So we need more of that, and we need more operatives. We need more trained campaign operatives on the right that know how to win, that know how to go into the arena and fight and win. So, I mean, obviously, we're doing a lot of that at Patriot Academy. Obviously, FlashPoint is educating the people, as Michelle Bachman was talking about in the last segment. But it's just, I wouldn't even call it a wake-up call. It's just a good reminder for all of us that the blocking and tackling that it takes to win is more important than the Hail Mary pass. We're not going to get, as Michelle said last hour, another Donald Trump. You're going to have to start winning this in the systematic campaign strategies that have worked in the past.
All right, so Mark, let me go back to you, because you said focusing on different issues. What should she have been focused on? Do you think that would have made a difference?
Well, I would look to the campaign of Glenn Youngkin, and I would argue it's the antithesis of the Winsome Sears campaign. Glenn Youngkin did not rely on consultants. He's a very smart guy. He ran his own campaign, and he ran what I would describe as a razor's edge campaign. I'll explain to you what I mean by that. You know, he could not win with the endorsement of Donald Trump. He didn't seek it. He didn't ask for Donald Trump's support, but he also didn't attack Donald Trump. And that's a fine razor's edge to ride, and Youngkin did it well. Virginia is a unique state. It is a northern state in the north, and it is a true southern state in the south. And you actually have to run a campaign for both of those states within a state, and they're different campaigns. And Winsome Sears did not run what I would describe as that razor's edge campaign that would allow her to appeal to both the north and the south. I think at the very end of her campaign, I would say she closed out as strong as she possibly could, but she didn't run that campaign most of the way.
Yeah, all right, so let me bring in my guest here in studio, Cheyanne, running for governor of California. What are you taking? You got a lot of good information tonight.
Yes.
This is a lot of good advice for your campaign. I want you to weigh in on what you see. Where do you think perhaps, I know we all can look at our friend Winsome Sears and go, you did this wrong, but we need to learn from this. What do you see that you would have done differently?
Well, we have to be humble. We have to be teachable. We have to learn from our mistakes and tell the truth that we made some mistakes here. And I think some of the candidates that we selected for the Republican Party, we could have done better. And so I'm not saying that we have people that are perfect in the Republican, but I do feel that we do need people that can engage with people, connect with people, communicate with people. And that's why I'm running, because I feel as a pastor, I've communicated, connected with people. For 46 years, I've been a pastor. And I want to encourage pastors to run because they've been doing this for years. You know, you've been pastoring. And that's why I love David Lane, America Renewal Project. He is recruiting pastors. And I said, why pastors? They're not politicians. He said, well, they have the character. They already have been vetted. They have a biblical worldview. But more importantly, they know how to relate to people. They know how to love people. And we need to really pastor our state of California. So I'm running as a pastor to govern all of California, not just the Christian right or the Republicans in California. I want to reach out to every single person in California.
All right, let me go to Lance. Lance, what's your advice? We're going to do a little round table here. What's your advice for Papa Che here going into California? What does he need to do? What can he learn from tonight? I want to hear what you have to think.
Well, it's a challenge there, you know, because all of these people that are running on national issues, they didn't do as well as those that just focused on the domestic issues. I think, you know, listen, when you're dealing with a media saturation, there's an awful lot of spiritual manipulation and information bombardment that comes out of the press. The media that the left has, that the left listens to, still keeps them in this feeling that there's instability and Donald Trump's a problem. They're focusing, they're doing their job on the national issue. So it's really important that you figure out how to put your, finger in the air and realize what's really important to folks in California that's not being addressed by Newsom, or what is it that the thing that he is going to continue to do that is, it's not Newsom isn't running, but what is it that his leadership has done in the past that is the direction of the Democrat Party? And I think you have to be able to dissect that in a way that is meaningful. To me, the fact that they're doing this redistricting thing really blows my mind. I mean, I don't know if you can't get Republicans to get excited about that. I don't know who can. I think you're going to be driven from 40% or 50%, 45% of the vote with 20% representation down to like half that. And I think that that's an issue which is really going to be bothersome to Republicans, that they're not even going to be represented in their own state nationally. So that's something to be thinking about too.
All right, so let's talk about redistricting. We talked more about that in the first hour. We won't know anything while we're on the air because the polls close so late in California. But Papa Che, I want to know, how do you see that? Is that going, most likely that'll go, it's being said it'll probably go that way, the Democrat way. So how do you think that'll work? My opinion
is that because of the supermajority of Democrats, they're going to pass Proposition 15. But my faith is that what the enemy is meant for evil, God's going to turn around, use it for the good. I feel there are a lot of conservative Democrats who are just tired of the overreach of the government. It really is a totalitarian Marxist government, and they're just calling the shots. I mean, it's ridiculous for legislators to pick their own district to vote for themselves instead of we the people voting these people in. And so I feel it's going to pass, but I love this verse in Romans 8:28. God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him, to those who are called according to his purpose. And even today's election in Virginia and New Jersey, I want to encourage people that God is on the move, that the kingdoms of this world will become the kingdoms of our Lord and of our Christ. It says has become already. It's already a done deal in Revelation 11:15. And so we do know we're in the early stages of revival and reformation. But as Pastor Hank said, there's still darkness. There's still going to be shaking. And so we see darkness and light paralleling, but light overcomes darkness all the time. We win. So at the end of the day, we will see the victory. And I believe that California will be saved. I believe that I will win the governorship because so many people are praying and the church is coming out for the first time. Just imagine, you know, we have 12 million evangelicals in California, more than any other state except for Texas, but 6 million of them are not registered to vote. And then the 3 million that are registered don't vote. Right. But what we're doing is activating the church because there's a Spirit of God that's moving over California. We had Baptized California with 8,000 people being baptized in one day in Huntington Beach. We're seeing Hope California that we're getting prepared for. We're getting a stadium of 90,000 people for evangelism. And then when Charlie Kirk was assassinated, we just see the incredible young people in California at USC, UCLA coming forth. And so I'm very optimistic about the future. I believe the best days are ahead, but we have to ride the momentum of what we have seen. And I've shared that I believe that revival, reformation began in 2022 with Roe v. Wade being overturned on June 24th, President Trump winning. But the thing that really encourages me is that we had 1 million women gather October the 12th before the election, 375,000 gathered together under the leadership of my prophet, covenant friend, Lou Engle. And as we gathered together, 20 million were watching online. And this is the key. We prayed that President Trump would win. We made apostolic decrees based on prophetic words we received, and he won by a landslide. So I'm appealing to all those in Virginia. We have to pray. God does nothing without prayer. And of course, if we want to see revival, Jonathan Edwards from New Jersey, well, actually from Northampton, Massachusetts, said we have to have extraordinary prayer. And so I just really want to encourage people to pray like never before, and especially pray for California, because as California goes, so goes the rest of the United States.
Let's talk about what happened in New Jersey, Mark. I want you to see this. Wake Up New Jersey Post, bomb threats received in 7 different New Jersey counties favoring Republicans. They've been from overseas email accounts, reports, some polling locations already reopened. In fact, here, watch this clip, you'll see.
These threats were communicated electronically via email to at least 7 different counties across the Garden State. These threats certainly being taken seriously, and out of abundance of caution, some of the polling places were temporarily either closed or suspended as they moved voters to different locations. And then as they were doing those searches, then either able to reopen some of the facilities. We got a statement from the Attorney General of New Jersey. I want to put it up on the screen for you. It says, law enforcement officers have responded at each affected polling place. Some of these polling locations have already reopened to the public. The polls in New Jersey opened at 6 a.m. sharp. We have not seen any added security in the last hour or so, but it is certainly possible that we could see more because at this polling facility right here behind me, we are going to be seeing the Democratic nominee for governor, Mikey Sherrill.
Okay, so let me get you to weigh in on all of that distractions earlier in the day. Everything was resolved, so it wasn't what it was. Yet it probably did keep a few people from the polls. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing to note is that this kind of violence, these threats of very serious violence, they all flow one way. There's no Democrat area polling stations being closed down because of right-wing threats. The Democrats try to turn this into some battle of equivocation. Both sides are doing this stuff. It's not the case. We have candidates threatening people's lives on the left. We actually have now bomb threats into Republican polling places. This is the new left in the United States of America. I'm glad the Trump administration is dealing with it seriously because this is a genuine threat to the republic.
Well, Zoran Mandani, he had somebody to blame. Watch.
Incredibly concerning. And I think that it is an illustration of the attacks we're seeing on our democracy. Sometimes they're blatant and explicit in the manner of these bomb threats. And we have to understand this as part of the general approach the Trump administration has taken to trying to intimidate voters.
So now it's Trump's fault. All right, David, give us some updates here.
Can I give an update first?
Sure.
The candidate says to defend the democracy, that should disqualify them from running.
Yes, that's right.
Article 4 of the Constitution says you have to have a Republican form of government, not a democracy.
Right.
Our founding fathers hated democracy worse. They called it a mobocracy. So commentary for the moment, but when you hear a candidate say that, that just triggers me. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I can tell. It's okay. It's going to be okay. All right, so give us an update here, what we're seeing.
So one of the things in New Jersey, we talked about this a little bit earlier in the program. We knew it would tighten up. What was going on with the governor's race. It has tightened up. They're still expecting another 1.3, almost 1.4 million votes coming in, but it has tightened up a little bit. It's still a significant lead for the Democrat. Maybe not super surprising. We are tracking some of what's going on also in the New York City mayoral race, but also one of the things happening for us in our state of Texas, there are several ballot initiatives, those up on the screen. I think there were 17 of these, but some of them worth noting, like this one prohibiting capital gains tax on individuals' estates and trust amendments. There's only about 10% reporting right now, but this gives a really good trajectory of where we think it's going to go. The fact that 67, nearly 68% are saying that we don't want to see additional taxes. Let's look at the other three as well. So this one is Prop 8, limiting estate tax, any transfers. Again, we're saying no to more taxes. This one is all the way up nearly 75%. And I am just a little surprised that 25% of people think we need more taxes in general. But it's a prediction of where we think it's probably going to end up at this point. These are things we think are for sure going to pass. Another proposition we'll look at is the Parental Rights Amendment. Dad, we were talking about this a minute ago. It's kind of crazy that nearly 30% of voters, and I was going to say parents, maybe not all of these voters are parents, but 30% of voters in Texas thought that maybe parents shouldn't have the ultimate right of their kids.
And to be real clear, here's all it is. It's a constitutional amendment to provide that parents have the right to exercise care, custody, and control of the parent's child, their own kids, including the right to make decisions concerning the child's upbringing and the responsibility to nourish and protect the parent's child. How do 30% of Texans say, no, parents shouldn't have that? It's crazy. But at least that should pass easily in Texas.
Either they're not native Texans or they just graduated from a public school and are just confused on some of these things. The last ballot measure that is worth looking at is citizens' voting requirements. Just simply saying persons who are not citizens of the United States cannot vote in Texas. This should not be controversial, and yet 25% are protesting the idea that you have to be a citizen of the United States to be able to vote in Texas, which maybe even, Gene, goes back to in New York City, where they're not requiring any voter ID to vote in the mayoral race in New York City.
Nobody needs ID. We all trust everybody.
Well, it also takes us for a minute into Maine, because Maine has two ballot initiatives tonight. One of those ballot initiatives is, should you have voter ID to vote in Maine? And at this point, all the results aren't in, but at this point, about 56% of people in Maine say, no, we don't want to require voter ID. There's also the other ballot initiative is kind of what's called a red flag law, that if you say, oh, so-and-so shouldn't be trusted with a gun, you take guns away rather than having due process. That is failing in Maine. So Maine is protecting Second Amendment, but at this point, they're letting anybody vote without voter ID.
So no ID, but keep your guns.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
Interesting.
That's it.
So what do you think, Rick? No ID, but keep your guns in Maine.
Well, it just shows you how much education we've got to do across the entire country, including in Texas, for those 30% that don't believe in parental rights. That's why I was saying earlier, it's in every community. The leftists are in every community to some extent. In some areas, they're 5, 10, 20%. And then in places like New York, unfortunately, it looks like they're more like 60%. So we've got a lot of work to do. And I want to say to Pastor Shea, I love pastors running for office. I think this is a really positive development. I'm actually in Michigan at a Liberty Pastors event. We're training pastors on just how to be more engaged in the culture. And there's some candidates here. Ralph Rebrandt is running for governor in Michigan. And I was just telling him last night the same thing I would say to all pastors running for office, and free advice, Pastor Shea. But I was just telling him, say, look for ways to just simply say to the constituents, hey, all I'm after is doing things in a better way. I'm looking for what are the principles that produce freedom and prosperity and letting everybody live their American dream, and how do we kill the principles that are killing the American dream? And it just so happens that the good principles do come from the Bible, but we don't have to quote chapter and verse every time we give the speech. We can talk about the principles, the biblical principles, and just like Charlie Kirk did on those campuses, we can disciple with biblical answers on every single issue. Pastor Shea's exactly right. Even conservative Democrats, sometimes even moderate Democrats, are tired of the pain. They're tired of the bad progressive policies that have produced bad results, and they're looking for a better way. And pastors have the answers because all the good answers come from the Word of God.
Amen. Look at that. That was a glowing endorsement, I think.
Absolutely, because we're really building our campaign on the truth, the Word of God, and we're just proclaiming righteousness and justice, mercy and truth proceeds from his presence, Psalm 89, verse 14. And so I just really want to encourage people to have these biblical values that are running for office as pastors.
Amen. All right, let me, before we go off for station ID here, and we might lose a few people, let's go to New York City Mayor General Election. I've got it pulled up right here on my laptop, right with 38% reporting. Can you put that up? Yep. 580,000 for Mandani, or as Hank said, Mamkani, Mamkami. Cuomo, 485,000. Curtis Sliwa, 94,000, who should have dropped out of the race. Just my own personal opinion there. What do you make of that so far, David?
Well, this is one of the things where this is one of the states that allow a plurality. So you could win this race with 9% of the vote, as opposed to 51%, because when there's that many candidates in, just the top one takes it and walks away with it. So no runoff here. So this is not really always a good reflection of what the people believe, because you could have 15 of the candidates have the same constituency all split up, and the one dissenter, we had that in a state one time in a special election where the 7 people ran for Congress, 6 of them were pro-life and 1 was pro-abortion. And the pro-abortion person won because the other 6 split the vote up. So you can have that kind of, so the thing in what we're going to see in New York City is people are going to be stuck with this deal of, that may not be what I believe, it may not be what most of the city believes, but that's the leader, and that's the rules you play by. And by the way, just to update on Maine, Maine just flipped, so they decided they do want voter ID as of right now. So they want to keep their guns and protect the polls.
They listen to Rick.
No, red flag law, so we're going to give our guns away, we'll keep our ID. So they flipped on both of those.
Oh, they flipped on both?
Both of them.
So they flip on both. Oh, wow.
Okay, all right.
Wow.
Let me show you what Byron Donald says about those people in New York that are fleeing the state. Watch.
We all see what's happening in New York. Mamdani, that lunatic. He doesn't know economics. He's never had a real job, but he's going to lecture you and I about how policy and how systems work. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but worse, he is a radical of the worst kind. So for those of you in the city of New York who may have to, and hopefully Jack Ciattarelli becomes the next governor of New Jersey, and you could go across the Hudson. But if you need a place to go and you're not quite sure, always remember that in Florida, we are the free state of Florida, as Rick Scott said. We are the place and we are the land that will always stand by the Jewish people, as Governor DeSantis has done. And you have my word that going forward, Florida will always stand for freedom and liberty, and we will never tolerate anti-Semitism.
There you go. All right. Let me bring in, I know I was going to do this after the break, but let me welcome good friend here, Nate Schatzline from the great state of Texas. You've been listening to Rick try and talk about good things, and he's actually affecting the wrong things in the state of Maine. But real quick, I got 30 seconds. Give me a real quick teaser, what you see happening tonight.
Yeah, we've seen red states are getting redder, blue states are getting bluer. I think this is a wake-up call for the conservative movement and really for the church, is that, hear me on this, we haven't changed as many minds as we would want to. We need a spiritual revival to do that. We've seen a lot of transfer, a lot of red coming into places like Texas, a lot of blue going to places like New York. Look, we need a revival to fix what's going on in the elections tonight across our country.
All right, after the break, we'll give you new updates. A race has been called. Those of you leaving, make sure you follow us on YouTube or all the other options. We'll see you right after the break.
There's never been a more important time to be bold and speak truth. FlashPoint is answering the call. There's no shortage of vision, and it's time to impact culture in every way we can. And we can't do it without you.
We must do more. We can't just sit back and wait. That's why your gift makes such a difference here at FlashPoint.
Your giving fuels everything we are doing here at FlashPoint. We're here to equip, activate, and disciple. And your support makes this possible. FlashPoint is a 501c3, and your tax-deductible donation goes directly to the mission. Give at fparmy.com/donate or text FLASH to 28950. It's secure, quick, and makes an impact. If mailing your donation, send it to FlashPoint, P.O. Box 1, Newark, Texas, 76071. Stand with us. Speak truth. Be the light. This is FlashPoint. Tonight, the eyes of the nation are watching, and the church is awake. The ballots are cast. The battle is spiritual. And the destiny of a nation hangs in the balance once again. This is FlashPoint, Election Night in America.
Welcome back to Election Night in America. I'm Gene Bailey. Glad you're with us. All right, as we enter into our final half hour, let me show you what has happened in New Jersey. Look at that. New Jersey has been called for Mikey Sherrill. It's still updating. There you go. 2 million votes in. 61% reporting. Citarelli at 860 versus almost 1,200. What do you think, David? What's your take on this?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Coming into the election night, polls showed him, they predicted he might be within 1 point. That's not even close. That's a 15-point slap down. And so the blue showed up really big. The red didn't show up well at all, but the blue showed up really big.
In a big way. All right, Lance, you see what happened in New Jersey. Give me your take.
Yeah, well, you know, like I told you, I mean, I grew up there. This is mostly Democrat territory. Pennsylvania's made a remarkable flip towards being red. I'm most encouraged about that. New York, well, New York is New York, except for certain pockets in, you know, upstate New York and in Long Island, which are conservative. But I thought that what Nate said is rather stimulating. What we have is sheep and goat regions where you have a spiritual environment from, listen, we got in Spokane, Washington, or in Seattle, or in Portland, or out there in a lot of California, where there's principalities are there. Remember what Steve Jobs was accused of having? What's called a reality distortion field. He could literally like take an idea and you'd be sucked into his Steve Jobs world. This is the reality distortion power of what happens when you have entrenched government and union interests tied into the government money machine. And what really, I think, concerns me is that the voters have made a statement that the economy is the issue for them, not immigration, not crime. It's weird. Not culture, not transgender ideology, not how the, you know, sports, boys are going to be in the back of the girls' locker room. They're saying it's about money. That worries me, because when you really prioritize money over morality, it shows you're on that slippery precipice that's going in the wrong direction. I do think we need that revival mentality, but I also think we need to recognize, just us here, that the economy is not the result of anything that those Republicans did. That was the Biden 4 years and the spending of Washington. Trump will have the tax effect and the tariff income, $300 billion. That's going to kick in a couple of months. and it's going to be hopefully a different economic experience for the Republicans in midterms. But what you're hearing about is them whining mostly over the cost of living, which is not the Republican creation. It was the Democrat creation, and maybe that should have been something that they talked about.
Let me bring in back to Nate Schatzline. Nate, I'm going to get you to talk about Virginia, and I've got the Attorney General election results pulled up, which they've already called, unbelievably so, for Jay Jones, with 51% to 48%, with 78% reporting. What does this say to you? I mean, you're a Christian, you're a believer, you've been serving there in Congress. What does this say to you?
You know, I look at the text messages that were sent by Jay Jones, which I know has been addressed. I look at the way that he literally called and said, in text message form that he wanted to see the murder, the assassination, heinous things about the family of the Republican Speaker of the Virginia House. I look at, how this was just really overlooked. And I see as the radical left is becoming much more bold in their violence, much more bold in the debauchery that they are willing to put up with. And I think my concern here is we're seeing this great state, a state that has so much potential and is so close to being red, so close to making sure that we can keep pushing the great American policies that we know work. And when I look at it, I'm concerned because that small margin represents a church that didn't speak up. That small margin represents a cohort of pastors that were unwilling to say the quiet part out loud, that were unwilling to stand up and say, hey, maybe we should fight for decency, that these aren't political issues we're talking about, but these are spiritual issues we're talking about. And so I look at it and I say, you know what, we're so close. If we can have pastors who are willing to speak up in the next 4 years, then this will never happen again. And sadly, Scripture says that the Lord will turn us over to the desires of our heart. And I worry for the states like this, where pastors are unwilling to speak up. The Lord will give states what they ask for, but the light shines brightest in the darkest. And there's never been a better time for pastors to start speaking the truth.
Wow, that's true. Mark, let me get you way in here.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting stories of the night is going to be the margin of victory for Zoran Mamdani. It's pretty close if you put Sliwa's votes with Cuomo's votes. And the question is going to be for Curtis Sliwa, and I think this is a fair question. What made you decide you wanted to be the spoiler? It was obvious. It's been obvious for at least a month that he couldn't win this election. I don't know whether it's ego. I don't know whether it's hubris. I don't know whether the guy's just hallucinating, but for him to stay in this race is pretty outrageous. You look at the numbers right now, it's almost tied. It's swinging a little further to Zoran Mamdani, but it's almost tied if Sliwa's votes go to Cuomo. Man, when we do this kind of stuff to ourselves as Republicans, we really need some introspection, and I think Sliwa has some questions to answer.
No, I think you're right. In fact, let me show you this, the New York mayor general election. Mamdani at 782, 646. You're right. If you took Sliwa's 120K and put it up there, you're going to be really close to where it needed to be. Rick, you're seeing these numbers, and this brings up a good question about Sliwa. Is this something the Republican Party, couldn't they have done something more to help Sliwa get out of the, I mean, he was the Republican candidate. They just, it seems like somebody could have talked to the boy and said, hey, take the beret off your head and stop doing this.
Well, it is New York. Somebody could have put a horse's head in his bed or something like that. I don't know. No, look, free society, free world. We deal with this all the time. Usually the spoiler is like a libertarian candidate that's siphoning off 10% or whatnot. May have not a spoiler situation in the state Senate race there in your backyard, Gene. Our friend Lee Wobgans is going to be in a runoff most likely. I guess I haven't seen anything other than the initial really early voting on that one, but there's another Republican in it that's siphoning off about 10 or 12%, and Lee probably would have won straight up tonight and not have to go to a runoff. We'll see where it ends up later. But, yeah, this happens quite a bit. I want to go back to something that Nate was saying, though, because the pastor involvement and the church involvement is always the difference. And the lack of involvement is always the factor in losing. What happened in Virginia 4 years ago? The church got very engaged in that. We had all these churches involved, all these poll watchers. Everybody was, they were riled up about what David was talking about last hour, and they got involved. And what Michelle was talking about, they sort of were lazy this time. They didn't keep that attitude of duty is ours no matter what. We keep doing our duty every single time. So to Nate's point, we've still got a lot of work to do, and we've got to get Christians to start thinking about doing their duty no matter what the results were last time, no matter what the field looks like, no matter the positive or the negative. You do your duty, you stay in the fight no matter what, and we just got to do a better job at that. The left does that. They don't go home when they lose. They come back and scratch and claw for more. So just getting a little bit more of that perseverance into our people, I think, is going to be a key factor for us.
All right, Lance, let me get you to weigh in here. I mean, I know what you said. I mean, this is the Northeast. And when I look at Virginia kind of went right down the line of what the way they usually vote. The district, Charlottesville, Virginia Beach in that area. It's no surprises there yet. And so we can say the campaign didn't do anything. But let's take Winsome Sears and the personalities out of it. There's concern in America about what's going on. It still says to me that Republicans or conservatives and conservative Christians are not showing up and they're not voting. It has to be.
Well, we got to look at the data, before I know that's a fact. But I am intrigued by the idea that the pastors, the evangelicals that are in New Jersey, that are in the churches. I'm a little concerned. I think, Gene, that now that we don't have to worry about, we can make all our own mistakes on FlashPoint. We don't have to worry about getting someone else's platform in trouble. We should have a web page that has something like the Plastic Pulpit Review, which is a list of churches that refuse to engage their people in the civics of the election. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea that it's like students rating professors, that Christians should rate their church on how ready and urgent and engaged am I in terms of our pulpit taking responsibility for the spiritual climate of our territory. I think the pastors do have a lot of responsibility. I think that, all right, let me go be controversial here. So like the major churches in New York City, that like the Tim Kellers and the Hillsongs and the other ones that had dominant voices in New York, they were like never Trumpers. They went third way. They deliberately distanced themselves. They picked a Rick Warren kind of, we don't want to be partisan political. They wanted to be for everybody. And you know what? I think that those leading ministries that are in territories, when they fail to steward the spiritual authority God gave them to support the secular righteousness of government, they do a long-term damage to the conscience of the culture. So that's my take on. Same thing with Hillsong in Australia.
Yeah,
I met with the Senate there. I said, you got a massive big mega church here. Did they back you? They looked at each other. They said, not really. They're kind of politically agnostic. They don't want to get involved. So let me just say, and we need new churches too that are going to be patriotic. I guarantee if Trump went in there and had some rallies, you'd see a little bit more turnout there, for the Republicans. We have to do a better job of working around the weakness of the church.
Okay, Papa Che, let me give it to you. You hear what they're talking about, pastors and churches. Thankfully, you're not a pastor that would be on the Plastic Pulpit Review.
Right.
That Lance was
By
talking
God's
about.
grace.
Yes. But, I mean, is that something? Let's talk about that. I mean, at some point, and we've been saying on this program, and I've said it with you as well, people have to understand where their pastor lies. And we have done such a good job of maneuvering and not really standing for anything for decades.
Right.
We don't know where people stand. And I don't know if pastors even know where they stand.
No, I think Lance is correct. We need to blow the trumpet in Zion, as Joel 2. We need to return with all of our heart, with weeping, fasting, and mourning. But then it goes on to say, Joel 2 down to verse 12, let the priests weep between the porch and the altar. Pastors have to lead the way. As pastors go, so goes the church.
Right.
The reason why we have woke churches is we have woke pastors, simple as that. And Marshall's book, Shepherd's Been Sold, the sale of pastors, is a real eye-opener to what's going on in America. And so, my frustration really, and I say this because I love pastors, I've been a pastor,
sure.
I work with pastors around the world, but judgment begins in the house of the Lord. 1 Peter 4:17, and begins with leaders. It always begins with a shepherd. You see the indictment against the shepherds, the false shepherds, or shepherds who are just feeding themselves and not the sheep. And so we have to preach the whole counsel of God. Unfortunately, we have a theology. It's not the gospel or the kingdom. It's the gospel of salvation, which that phrase is not in the Bible. It's about me. How could I meet your felt needs? Instead of what's on God's heart. He is king over every sphere. Yes, he's king over the family. Yes, he's king over the church, but he's king over government. He's king over media. And we need to see righteousness and truth in every sphere, because we've been praying for 2,000 years. Matthew 6:10, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so I believe the answer is, if my people called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face, but it has to be pastors leading the way and turn from their evil way. There's sin in the church. There's sin with pastors. That just even not stewarding our citizenship is sin to me.
Right.
Okay, so it's a sin of mission. So I just want to really call pastors out and just say, please, on behalf of our nation, and one day you're going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ, 2 Corinthians 5:10, and you're going to have to give an account how you led your people, how you stewarded everything, the responsibility as a pastor. And I just really believe that we're seeing awakening taking place, because when I sued Governor Newsom, it wasn't just me. I got 145 pastors who are part of our network be part of the plaintiff, and they said we're all in. And so we have at least, as God told Elijah, there are 8,000 prophets who have now bowed their knees to Baal. And so I'm saying there is a remnant, and I believe that remnant can turn things around, but we have to vote with our presence. If you are in a woke church, I want you to go to a church like Harvest Rock Church in Pasadena that's preaching the whole counsel of God. And I promise you, you will receive the blessing of God. Our people are prospering because they're doing God's will and they're glorifying Him, walking in the fear of the Lord.
Okay, Rick, you had a comment there you wanted to interject. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's people all over the country that are looking for churches like that. And so if you're looking for that, go to mychurchfinder.org. For a church to be listed there, they've got to be biblically truthful. They've got to be, culturally engaged. They've got to be politically active. They've got to be doing all the things that Pastor Shea was just saying. And then, of course, wherever you're going, get them to do a biblical citizenship course, and it'll create a group within that church that is active in the community. It can help the church know where to be salt and light to be effective in that community. It's working, and that's part of why I'm at this Michigan conference for these Liberty pastors. We're seeing their eyes light up. They're becoming the Frederick Augustus Muhlenbergs that were not like John Peter in Virginia. Don't forget, Virginia's got a great, rich history of pastors like Samuel Davies and John Peter Gabriel Muhlenberg. Right. But Frederick Augustus Muhlenberg was the one that thought he shouldn't have gotten involved. And then he got awakened by the negative and the bad when the British came into his town, and he became the first Speaker of the House. We got a lot of pastors out there that are like that. They've been on the fence, or maybe they've been quiet, and they're starting to realize, I got this wrong, and they're starting to get engaged. Let's help them, and let's find good churches out there that will be active.
That's so good. In fact, it does have a way of affecting you when they burn your church down, like Frederick Muhlenberg. All right, Nate, do you have a good church in Fort Worth anywhere?
Oh, man, let me tell you,
Is it my church?
Church. Oh, my goodness. Mercy culture is amazing. And I actually want to speak to what Papa Che was saying and what Rick just addressed. And that is the fact that what we're seeing inside New York City right now is the result of the Islamic movement not being afraid to speak up about their faith. And I think what really is so concerning is we're watching as Zoran Mamdani is practicing something called taqiyya. That's the practice of lying to infidels or lying to Christians and Jews in order to push the Muslim cause. That's blessed in their eyes, right? That's exactly what they believe as an Islamic Islamic religion. It's a religion that celebrates lying to Christians in order to gain power. We're talking about a religion who will vote for abortion on demand, but will never abort a Muslim child in the hopes that Christians will abort Christian children. We're talking about a religion that will vote for social welfare programs to get Christians on the government's hand only so that they can gain the power and Christians can be subservient to Muslims in power. This is dangerous. And I want to give a warning to the church, because the church in New York, the church in Virginia, the church across America has to wake up and realize that we have inadvertently been practicing tequila, watering down the gospel in order to grow our churches, all the while ceding ground in these spaces in government. And I just have to tell you, we're not called to partner with other religions. We're called to partner with one God. His name is Jesus Christ.
Come on.
Speak the truth always, no matter what. And I'll tell you, Gene, I'm so proud to go to a church that unapologetically preaches the gospel. And as a result, watching our SD9 race right now as the true conservative is going to end up coming out on top in Fort Worth, Texas.
So good. All right. So speaking of New York, let me go over here to David and Tim. You've got a race to call, I understand.
Yeah, the New York mayoral race has been called for Zohran Mamdani. As we've been talking about a little bit, some of this is not super surprising. The way it was packaged, I was actually just watching on X, and there were people identifying that they were so excited to vote for this person. They were transgender individuals. They said because he's promised $65 million to the trans community, which someone who's a Muslim is not going to do that. But this is part of the dishonesty that we have seen, the gullibility of Americans, and the lack of leadership at times of the church. So unfortunately, this is where the mayoral race is going in New York City.
One other race we can talk about is the congressional race in Texas. It will go Democrat tonight, but that's not a surprise. It was Sheila Jackson Lee before that. It was Sylvester Turner after her. This is one that was going to be Democrat, and it has gone Democrat. I think there were 16 candidates in that one, but that is not. I feel like this has been the night for calling the Democrat Party races.
But saying it's gone Democrat, it's going to go to a runoff. But the only people in the runoff are Democrats. So we know it's eventually going to be a Democrat seat. But as kind of identified, it does seem like the Democrats have held their ground on this one. So where we thought there might have been some makeup along the way, we've not seen that yet from moderates, independents, Republicans having a strong showing at this point, other than where they were expected to.
All right, let's. We're going to wrap up the evening because I don't want to call any other Democratic races. Our Democrat races. Let me go around the horn here and get you guys to wrap up. Rick, I'll start with you. We've got 7 minutes, so you got to take one.
Yeah, I take 7? No, I'm kidding. No, seriously. It's just once again, great reminder for us to stay steady, stay in the fight, even double down and get even more involved. But by the way, congrats to Nate for the job he's going to be taking and helping us all across the country, not just here in Texas, to get pastors involved. Super excited for you, brother. But yeah, I just think we have to recognize that we've got a lot of work to do. As Lance said earlier, these are blue areas where nothing was shocking tonight, but it reminds us that we've got work to do in every community across America. So take heart, don't get down, continue to be happy warriors, and just stay steady and stay in the fight.
Amen. Good word. All right, Nate, give you a chance to wrap up, but tell people what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so I just got the opportunity to take a job at the National Faith Advisory Board, where I'll be serving under Pastor Paula White, which is senior advisor in the White House Faith Office. And we are going to be building a bridge from churches to the highest levels and elected officials to give pastors a seat at the table. And I think my final call tonight would just be to say that the scripture is so clear. We can look at these races and be a little bit discouraged about these Virginia races and New York. I want to remind the church in places like Virginia, we are so close to taking ground that we only need a remnant of pastors. And I believe there's a remnant of pastors and spiritual leaders watching tonight. Scripture's clear. If my people will call on his name, will humble themselves and pray, turn from their wicked ways, then he will heal their land. Revival is on us to steward. A political movement is the start and could be the precipice of revival, but it is not going to be what drives revival. Only the local church can steward that.
So good. All right. Papa Che, take a minute here and wrap up.
Well, I'm very hopeful for California because President Trump won 41%. We had 10 counties that went red in 2024. And I feel after the LA fires, 80% of those homes, we're talking about 16,000 homes destroyed, are owned by Democrats.
Right.
And I think they're fed up. I think Proposition 50 is going to pass, but it's going to be a narrow margin. I hate to say it, I hope it doesn't, but I feel it's going to pass because of the trend. We're hoping that AB 495, that Newsom wouldn't sign it, but I learned in seminary, don't expect an unbeliever to act like a believer until they become a believer. And so I just feel the reality of it, but there is a root of righteousness and glory in California that gave us Azusa Street, and the Jesus People movement gave us Billy Graham in 1949 and the Charismatic Renewal in 1958 with Van Nuys, St. Mark's Church. So I'm hopeful that we're going to shift in 2026, and I'm learning a lot here because we have our work cut out, and that's why I want to encourage the ecclesia, the church in California. Let's learn from this election. Let's mobilize. Let's get the votes out. And as a church won 4 years ago in Virginia, I'm expecting the church to come forth, but also the conservative Democrats who are just tired of the woke government. And it is the economy. 35% of California now, in the fourth largest economy, is living in poverty. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the wells of oil production. We import 60% of our petroleum. We pay the highest gas prices, highest taxes, highest electricity bill. It's impacting the poor people. And I believe that poor people are going to hear what I'm going to say, that I want to see California affordable again. I want to see the streets safe again. We're going to enforce Proposition 36. Newsom has not given a single cent to make the misdemeanors a felony once again, but I'm going to enforce that. And we have the right laws that has to be enforced. We have the infrastructure bills that we passed to have 4 new dams. We're just not acting on it because of the extreme woke environmentalists that have hijacked our government. So I'm going to just bring common sense. What Rick said is so true. I'm just talking about, look, I want you to be happy in California. You could have a better life and more affordable, but it's just common sense policies that we want to pass.
Great. Mark Meckler, take a minute.
Yeah, I would just tell everybody, don't be discouraged and don't be surprised. I mean, these are the election results. If you've been paying attention, we all expected. We always pray for and hope for miracles. But I think this is exactly what I expected. You're looking at states like New York and Virginia and New Jersey. These are states that are blue states, and we shouldn't expect red results in blue states. That doesn't mean we shouldn't fight for them. We should fight for them, pray for them, work for them. But don't be disappointed when you get what the odds tell you that you're going to get. And then I would also say, watch these states over the next couple of years, because it's going to get really bad. It's going to get much worse than it is now. And I'm hoping that the citizens eventually come to their senses and revolt.
Okay, Lance, you got like 30 seconds.
Listen, I got a very important thing to say. First of all, Che, you need to work with the image of you were willing to go to jail for the freedom of California. Put that out there. It'll appeal to the younger 30 crowd that you're not just a preacher, you're a rebel. And that'll start to get the youth votes. Secondly, I'm glad Mondami ran. I'm glad he succeeded because the squad needed a guy. Now you're going to see the failure of socialist policies. It's going to totally whack them in the head as they try to flip red territory blue or purple territory blue. They just lost because everything he does is going to be under a microscope, and the Democrats are going to be running to distance themselves from his message because we're going to tag them with him as the new party.
All right. You heard it. Thank you. And thank you to David. Tim, I give you guys a chance. We got like 90 seconds. Take a minute of that and wrap up.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that, as we're looking big picture, all that's been going on, there's not a lot of surprises, maybe some disappointments for sure. One of the things, though, I was just looking on X, and Senator Markwayne Mullin was on the news, and he identified that Chuck Schumer had a private meeting with Democrats, said we cannot stop the shutdown until after the election. We have to win in Virginia and New Jersey, New York City, and after that we can end the shutdown, which just tells you how much of a game this is to so many politicians. It's real life for many of us, but it's a game for some of these Democrat leaders and politicians. And if we did not dislike them enough, we should dislike them more, and maybe obviously pray for them more.
Sure.
But recognize this is what's going on.
Okay, 30 seconds. Tell me what's going to happen Monday morning.
This coming Monday morning? Is there a surprise you haven't planned?
Or listen, no, I'm going to have to wait till Monday, tomorrow morning. What's going to happen?
The media's going to pick up on, look how well the Democrats did. This is going to be a real boost to them. This is nothing tonight was unexpected, except maybe the margins of victory. So they got what they wanted, but they will capitalize on this. They're really good at media, and they're going to make it seem like a blue wave is coming to everybody.
All right, so we've got our work cut out for us, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a lot of work to do. I want to say thanks, of course, to David and Tim, the whole Wall Builders team, Michelle Bachman, Rick Green, Hank Kunneman, of course, Pastor Che, and even Rick Green and Lance Wallnau. Thank you guys for all being a part here on our first election coverage for FlashPoint, Election Night in America. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Go share this. We will see you Thursday night. Well, I was hoping to say, wow, what a night, man, a night of victories. And it was just not for our team. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I believe what Lance said. I believe what you've heard all these men and women say on the show tonight, whether it's Michelle Bachman, Liz Joy, or any of my guests. We have to understand the times we're living in. This is not a time to back off. This is not a time to back down. This is a time to push forward. We've been saying ever since Trump won the election, we have to push harder. Keep your foot on the gas. This is not a time to let up. And what you heard David Barton say, tomorrow morning, you're going to hear a lot of stuff and you're going to get, they've got some momentum. We need to grab that momentum back and make sure we help America wake up to what's going on in our nation. I'm not quite ready to say I'm glad Mamdani won, but I am glad we're going to see what socialism is all about. So listen, you and I, we've got a lot to do.